Okay, today we're going to talk with Joy and Marvin Johnson. And Joy is a Brochu and Marvin is a Johnson Johnson there. Both of you, all your life in Nipigon, right?
Right.
Yes.
Right, okay. So Marvin, introduce yourself and just tell us your mom and dad's family there.
Yeah. I'm Marvin Johnson. My mom and dad were Toyney and Hamo Johnson. I had 3 sisters, Barbara, Brenda, and Audrey, and I've lived in Nipigon all my life.
Joy?
And my mom and dad is Carol and Herman Brochu. And I came to Nipigon when I was 2 years old, so you might as well say I've been here all my life.
And your siblings
I have 1 sister and 1 brother.
and names?
Anna Gilbo, she lives in Dorian, and Bert Brochu, he lives in Prince George, BC.
Oh, good. Okay, so we want to talk to them in connection with the Nipigon Fire Department, Nipigon Volunteer Fire Department. So Marvin, just kind of give us a little background of when you joined it, maybe why you joined it.
Well, one of the reasons why I joined it, we bought a house just one door down from Rolly LaFramboise. Got to know our neighbor Rolly, and he didn't badger me, but he talked to me often about joining the fire department because I was a young man then. And this was about early 80s, 81. And so I went up to the fire department, and Dick was the fire chief at the time. He took a look at me. I had to do a medical, and Jimmy Logan and I were joined at the same time. And it was a wonderful place. We learned a lot. The camaraderie between all the guys was fantastic. The Archie Salo was there. He was the deputy chief at the time. Raymond Huntus Dick was on his way to retirement, so Raymond Huntus took over as the fire chief. And Ed Belanger was, back then they were called lieutenants, the officers. Oscar Bosch. There was all kinds of wonderful guys, and I mean the learning experience. One of the main reasons they brought me on is to the fire department because they had the old 1947 Mercury. It was a standard transmission, and everybody was having a hard time driving it, and I was driving truck for Domtar at the time, so that was one of the reasons I got in. And over the years, as things changed, it was a drastic change from just fighting fires in Nipigon. Under Raymond, the government started changing things. The OPP didn't want to do auto extrication anymore, so we got into the auto extrication, which was something that I took on wholeheartedly. I ended up being in charge of it, and it was a wonderful experience and a dreadful experience at the same time.
Because during that time when you were there, even the traffic on the highway changed dramatically.
Oh yes,
right?
yes. And the people started traveling further for jobs. The summer traffic was horrendous, and then trucks were starting to become more and more prevalent on the highway because the railway wasn't it wasn't the hub anymore.
Right.
It was your trucks were delivering everything like they do today, and it was surprising when we first started the amount of bad accidents we had. Like we had that big toluene wreck down at the corner at the junction of 17 and 11. And at the time I was working for MTO, so I was always on the road. A lot of times I carried my fireman's equipment with me in the truck, Yeah, it was, but on the upside, everybody got along so well. And Joy was in the part of the Fireflies. The family environment, our kids, everybody were involved in the fire department. As time went on and I became an officer, the other rural communities like Murillo and the smaller communities would have for volunteer firemen a fireman's competition. And got wind of it. They used to send us a letter, and nobody really wanted to do it. And one time we're up at the fire hall and everybody's there, all the ladies and what have you, and and we were talking about it again, and Joyce said, why don't you either shut up or put up. So we
can do that.
Yeah,
I could be number 1.
Yeah.
Well, then do it.
Yeah, we got a team together in our first year. We had no ideas how the rules worked or whatever, so we made a lot of phone calls to a lot of people in Murillo because they were hosting it. I think we drove them nuts actually. And the first year we come in second place. So it kind of spurred us on. We had in our team was Butch Kovacs, Gordy Belanger, myself, Kenny Plemmel, Jimmy Dampier, and second year because whoever won the competition, which Murillo won again, they hosted it. So when we went to Murillo the second year, we won it. So we won it, I think, for 3 years in a row.
Yeah.
And we got tired of hosting it because it's a big job. You know. We had a big supper, at the Legion after the event, and then a dance, which and I mean everybody had a blast. It was fantastic.
You did it in the schoolyard, Georgian
Yeah,
Hill.
Georgian schoolyard. Yeah,
and had it all set up in the schoolyard.
Yeah.
Nipigon Hydro came and they helped us. Like we had a big post in the ground for the gate valves and what have you, and I mean everybody chipped in.
Right.
And the place was packed. Like, I mean, everybody's out to watch, and our association had decided, maybe we should start selling T-shirts. I came to the firemen's competition in Nipigon of all places, and we used to sell out before they got in the building. So we ordered more and more, and so that was better for the association because that went into buying equipment then.
Right.
But
Wow.
like I say, the family environment, like our kids were helping out, our kids were always with us, and the friends that we made over the years across the district was, it was fantastic, eh?
At that time, did the Red Rock Indian Band have a department?
They were just starting.
They
were just starting, yeah.
Okay, I just kind of didn't remember
Yeah.
when they started.
Yeah, and I mean, and it was a good thing they did because I mean, when it came to mutual aid, a lot of times because you're a volunteer fire department, everybody usually has to
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
So not everybody's available or they're out of town, and so the mutual aid system with Red Rock, the Red Rock Indian Band, like their fire department, and they had a lot of good guys on there.
Is Dorian part of mutual aid?
Dorian was too. Dorian Herkett. And you could actually call Scriber or Terrace Bay, like if it was a big event, like a forest fire, or
Okay.
Like I mean, when the plywood mill caught fire, they'd sent trucks down from Comney, and
Right.
their tankers and what have you. Eh?
So that reminds me, you would have seen some big fires.
Some big fires. Yeah, I saw some iconic buildings in Nipigon disappear.
Right.
I mean, the worst part was that we were lucky. We never had a fatality in a fire when I was on the fire department. So that part was good. I mean, it's terrible to lose your house, but
Yeah.
yeah, it was, like I say, it was an experience. The Auto X was a little bit more than I thought was to it than it was going to be, but we were dedicated. We had a lot of practices. Jimmy Dampier, when he bought his big yard up on the highway there, and he had a lot of wrecked cars that we could practice on. Jimmy Kay was, he was right in there. David Kingston. It was all good guys. Guys that you knew when you got to the scene, knew what they were going to do, eh?
Right.
Yeah.
I can remember you guys practicing at the landfill.
Oh, yeah. Yes,
Well,
yeah.
relaxed out
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, we set one car on fire a little too early one time. It burned down, the fire went out before the rest of the guys got there. But those are things, and because they're all volunteers,
Yeah.
and nowadays we just we're invited to the Christmas party, the retired guys, and it's really nice to see like some girls joining up.
Yes.
So, women.
Yeah.
Which is back in my day, there was some ladies wanted to, but it just wasn't. Not that it wasn't acceptable. It was just nobody took it seriously. Like especially in the officers, it was you got to be a big beefy guy that, and I mean. We've got 3 daughters, and what boys can do, girls can do better. They think about it before they do it.
I can remember on the MTO, Alice worked one year. Oh my goodness, the men did not like that.
Well, I know
You're
it.
right.
Yeah.
And now it's totally accepted.
Oh,
It
yeah.
is. Yeah.
Yeah. While you're talking, then how did the Fireflies get involved then, Joy?
Well, we were behind whatever the men were doing. Whenever they were called out, we would be at the fire hall. It was just automatic. It was all wives, girlfriends, whatever. And we would go make coffee, sandwiches, because sometimes they were in for hours and hours and hours, right? And so then we decided that, well, what the heck, we should be something. Because we've always are there. So we came up with the idea of being the Fireflies. And pretty much that just took off from there. We, because like I say, we would do the coffee and stuff when the guys were gone to fires. We'd bring it out to them wherever they were. And then we would do the meals when they had mutual aid meetings and stuff. Sometimes it was breakfast, lunch, supper we would put on for them. And it was just a great bunch of ladies that all got along, and it was a blast. Even in stressful times, it was good.
So then you got involved in the schools, because I remember the Fireflies.
Well, during the fire
Presentation.
safety week, we would have poster contests, and the firemen would visit the schools, and we just kind of supported whatever the firemen were involved in, and we would just kind of pick up the slack and go that extra step. So
I just remember them being presentations to the
Yeah.
kids
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
with the Fireflies.
I think with Joyce during Fire Week, because the scariest thing to a child in a fire, or actually anybody, is a fireman coming in all dressed up with a Scott air pack on, breathing like he's some TV monster. So we would dress one or two guys up, even though it was, fairly hot in those suits, and show the kids so that it wasn't scary, and let them put the mask on and what have you. And I thought that was one of the best things we could have ever done. That it's not a bad thing.
Okay. And it still is when the fire department goes to the schools, the kids flock.
Oh,
to
they
it,
do.
Yeah.
Because you're right, they want to try on
Yeah.
the equipment.
And they love the truck.
Yeah.
One of my best things being a fireman was being Santa Claus.
Ah.
Sometimes it was a little difficult with our own daughter Jocelyn, our youngest one. We would make up a story that like Santa Claus was busy, and because I was fairly round at the time, that I could fill in for him, and she
you
seemed
were a
to,
helper.
like a helper. So she, and because our neighbor at camp, Shasimov, that was Santa. So
Okay, you got to edit all that. You can't put that on the thing
What?
because kids watch this.
Oh.
No, it'll be
No.
okay. But
Yeah.
Santa Claus has lots of helpers.
He has lots of helpers, and
Yes.
and being Santa Claus for the kids, I just loved it. It was one of the most enjoyable things I've ever done at the fire department, and to this day, it's if they asked me to do it, I'd do it again.
Do the firemen still have Christmas parties?
I don't know.
No, I
I
don't
don't
know
know.
either.
The trouble now, we got such a core group of guys that still work in Nipigon, like your son, like Alan and Butch, and but there's a lot of people that are working in mines and away from home, so it's hard, so they've kind of adapted. Guys are, when they're here, they're available, but and so it's a different dynamic now. Like it's not like where you got a job and stayed there for your lifetime,
Right. And in your time, they all worked locally.
Everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Because they
Everybody.
had- right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Both mills were running.
It's
so,
in the mill, or
Right.
or in the bush, like
yeah.
or MTO, like it was.
You're right.
Yeah, so when you had a fire, I mean, there was 23, 24 guys always showed up.
Right. Makes a difference.
Yeah.
And I hadn't thought of that part of it, where everybody is working elsewhere now.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is.
Even with the women are working.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
They could come from their jobs and
Yeah.
go to the fire.
Yeah.
Yes,
Oh yeah.
Yes. And the town accepted that, and the mill accepted that.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
those men would leave
Yeah.
their jobs.
Yeah, like with MTO, that was like if I had to go and you were gone for 12 hours, that was fine. Actually, MTO did pay me.
Right.
Like if we were when we had a couple of the big highway accidents,
Yeah.
But it like I say, overall it was a wonderful experience. I mean, not every moment was nice, but just being able to help people, like you knew what to do to get somebody out of maybe the worst day of their life,
Right.
and like I say, over the district we met some really nice people. Like it was, some of them were just amazing, and that goes to show you all the small communities. When it comes right down to it, they'll all pull together.
Yeah.
There's no arguing, there's no discussing, like, for 5 hours what's going to happen,
Right.
And
I just hear at council meetings them talking about the government now getting high tech.
yeah,
They want all of these requirements and everything.
Oh, yes.
And the small towns are having
Yeah.
to fight that, Marvin, to,
Oh, yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Well, even when I became an officer, the amount of paperwork that I started doing, you know, because when you go to an Auto X thing, there's insurance, you know, and so you're filling out the details of what happened. And, you know, and sometimes, you know, when you get back from an Auto X call, you just don't feel like doing that. And then you got to remember it, and then you're volunteering, but the government wants everything written down and in order, and
Right.
you know, and sometimes you'd have to go over it 2 or 3 times, and like now, back then we had a lot of support from the ministry, you know, like we had Mo Douglas, who was one of the main guys, and he come down, the amount of training that they gave us was amazing. Like I went to fire school, I think 4 or 5 times,
Right.
which was, you know, and the thing was, I worked in the bush at that time, so we were laid off in the spring. That's when fire school was on, so I could go for the week, and some amazing experiences. Again, some amazing people there, you know, and like I say, it's the only reason at the time I retired, I was going to have my neck surgery, and I didn't think I'd be 100%, you know, so I didn't want to compromise anybody. I just got the foreman's job at the highways at the same time. So my responsibilities were changing, eh?
Right, right. So why did you think the fireflies sort of died out, Joy?
Well, I really don't know. They just, like, lives change, people move on. You know, like when Marvin retired, well, then I just kind of faded out, and
Okay.
it's, yeah.
Who are some of the fireflies? Just name a few of the ladies then.
Oh my goodness, they were wonderful. We had Carol Williams, we had Ava Walters, Teresa Laframboise, Rosalie Belanger, Joanne Martin.
Ooh.
Who else was in there? Jody Belanger, because Gordy was in then.
Yeah, Gordy was
Rita Dampier.
Dampier, yeah.
Dampier, right.
Jeez, bringing up names I haven't heard for a long time.
Joanne Kovacs, Debbie Plemmel.
So
It was-
basically, any of the firemen's
Yep.
firefighters' wives
Yep.
would get involved
Yeah.
then, without question.
And then if there, like, I want to say it was the museum fire. Like, I mean, it doesn't just start and stop. They're there for hours.
Right.
And it's cold and they're freezing. And Jolene and Jennifer, our daughters, would come and they would help. They would be making coffee or bringing it down to the site so that the guys could get stuff and warm up for a minute and thaw out. And
Right.
the Elks fire, I remember them
Oh,
chipping the ice off of their stuff so they could get it off.
When the Elks fire was out, I walked home with my old bunker suit on, the old stuff we had, and I went and sat in the steam bath because I was so covered in ice I couldn't get the coat off, all the buckles. So I sat in the steam bath for about 45 minutes till I thawed out.
Okay, we'll stop right there for the first one. Okay, so just as part of the history then, while we're talking to them, just, you know, some of the big fires that we have had.
Yeah,
And when Joy mentioned museum, made me think of the big
Yeah.
fires that we had.
And I mean, say, like the Elks was the first big fire I attended to,
Oh,
and
right.
I mean it was. At first, when we first got there, it didn't look like it was. You know, we could get it under control. But the Elks, being an old building, had 2 roofs in it, and nobody really understood that until it was too late. You know, but that was a real education there. That, you know, because if you don't attend a lot of these things, you know, you don't learn. But like, you learn from everyone, and then
Right.
unfortunately the museum, you know, that was kind of a bad thing too, another old building,
Right,
and you know, and that was in the cold.
right,
I mean, that was a real battle to get that fire out, you know.
right.
And same thing too, even with the Normandy fire, they just, you know, once it gets in them older buildings, you know, and all wood structure, and I mean, that one almost literally disappeared, like it was, you know.
But look at the plywood mill, all the
Oh,
wood
my
that would
goodness,
be in
yes.
that plywood mill. I mean, when I can remember going in and admiring all those plywood walls
Yes,
and all
yes,
that.
yes.
The glue and
Yes,
the
the
dust.
glue and that.
We used to get a lot of calls to the plywood mill for the sawdust reclaim. They get a fire in the reclaim, like sparks from working, what have you. And the first education we got was there's a lot of sawdust in the air, which if it does burst into flame, will explode. So you don't go in there with a straight stream of water. You go in there with a fog pattern to wet everything down. And
Wow.
and then for a while there, we were kind of, they were frequent flyers with us. And then a loader caught fire there one time, and then burnt to the ground. Or, well, it actually didn't burn to the ground. We saved it. But they wished it would have burnt to the ground, the owner.
Yeah.
But
So those were all big businesses, but I mean, we have had house fires
Oh, yes,
too.
yes.
A lot of house
Oh,
Yeah.
fires,
yes,
but
and
those
chimney
were,
fires.
yeah.
yes, chimney,
Chimney
fires
fires
were
in the
common,
winter, yeah.
And and then the fire department started doing prevention. Like get your chimney cleaned. Then they try to burn dry wood and what have you. But I mean, everybody from
Right.
the older people were old school. We've been doing this for 40 years. That's the way we're going to do it. So, and that's where we usually had a lot of, like Euclid Burby when he used to live on First Street.
Yep.
His chimney fire it looked like a blowtorch when we got there coming out of the top of that pipe. But same too, he had been burning the same old wet wood.
Right.
Some of it was creosote wood that he had in the basement, but it's what he could get,
Right.
And back in the old days, you made do with what you had,
Right. Right.
But when we were talking about the fireflies, we used to put on, like the firemen in the springtime used to have a kind of a big supper and a dance. And they would invite all the communities around, the fire chiefs and some of the officers, and and they would come and they were actually like guests. So and there was presentations like the Fireman of the Year award, like whoever took a light off the truck or put a dent or scratch in it, they got the Driver of the Year award, and which was a lot of fun. And all the guys and the fireflies all pulled together and did all the cooking. Ronnie Bianco was instrumental in mostly getting all the materials, like all your food, and he would just direct us how to cook it. And that was, you would sound like peeling potatoes, like 30 pounds of potatoes or 40 pounds of potatoes. It wasn't much fun, but it was a blast. Everybody pulled together. There was no ifs, ands, or buts or arguing. And then when it came to the fireflies for raising money, the Halloween dances they put on, Christmas dances, and they were so well attended. People would come out in droves to,
Our big one was the 50s dance.
Yes.
All the 50s.
Yeah.
We would have a 50s dance, and we had contests and bubble gum blowing and hula hoop, and it was wonderful, wonderful time. And like Marvin says, everybody helped out, everybody pitched in and made it happen, and it was renowned in the region.
Am I right that the firemen did the one year when they dug the big hole at the fishing festival and cooked the meat down in the
Yeah,
ground?
that was years ago before I started. Yeah.
Oh, I've been just now that you mention
Yeah.
cooking, I'm thinking
Yeah.
of that. I remember.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that meat was good. They
Oh, yeah,
got the
yeah.
idea from somebody
Yeah.
and did that pit
And
fire.
but as times changed, even when we were there, we went from the big supper to just a barbecue, and then just us, because everybody was changing. People,
Right.
your work environments are changing, and so it's just the changing of the times,
Okay, but do go back, because it made me think. Every year there was the fireman. No, it was a business that was chosen.
Chosen yet to be.
And, yes, I can't remember the criteria,
Yeah,
but
we used to do a fire go and do.
fire and
All the officers would get together and do fire inspections, and you would just show up unannounced and go through the building, and and if there was any problems, and the business was, all of them were fantastic. If there was problems, they fixed them, and then we went back and we picked the most deserving one, whoever was
Right. I forgot about that because I
And-
have pictures of that.
When
Yeah.
it came to the dances and prizes for whatever, the businesses in Nipigon, they donated without question. It was really helped out, eh?
Well, the fire department is one of those vital groups
Yeah.
in any small community.
Oh.
Oh yeah,
Sure.
I mean, we took a lot of razzing from people that they like to do that. With basements now, you're not even gonna be able to save the basement, what have you, but you just brush that off and say, well, come and join then.
Yeah.
Come and see what it's like.
Yeah, and apparently they do. The fire department is changing again, and they have a lot of young people
Yes.
in there now, which is really nice
Yeah.
because
Oh, and back when we were involved, it was a phone system. There was no cell phones.
Yeah,
There were no
fire phones.
pagers. There were no. So you had blocks of. There might have been 7, 8, 10 people on. And I think it was like you'd phone and get the gatehouse, wasn't it? That would phone us.
The gatehouse would phone the fire phones, and like maybe 8 or 9 people in.
So you
fire
get
department,
fire department, fire department, and then
Yeah.
he would tell you where
The fire was.
the
Yeah.
fire was. But now, okay, because I'm home and I answered. Now you got to track down the husband to tell him. You got to get to. Yeah,
Yeah,
there
so
wasn't just a.
And then you'd have to phone some other people, like what might be on your block,
Right.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
So
I
good.
remember
That was
The
quite
siren
the
at Zeckner's too would blow.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
the siren would take off. Yeah, that
Yes.
was
Yes.
that let everybody know it was something's going on, eh?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was. Yeah, like I say, it even from the time I was, was there, the changes were just amazing. And
Right.
being young, it was easy to adapt to them.
Right.
And like I said, that when we took over the Auto X, if you're going to do something, you might as well do it good.
Right.
And all the guys on our Nipigon Fire Department, they were good. There's-
So once Auto X come in, you guys must have all had to take first aid.
yeah, first aid,
For sure,
CPR,
then, for that.
everything. Yeah.
Yes.
We even went through the legalities of, there's a Good Samaritan law in Ontario, and well, I guess it's across Canada, but if you did know how to help and you didn't help, then you could get into trouble, but you could not get into trouble by trying to help someone.
Somebody. Oh,
you know.
wow.
And I mean, and same thing too, working with the highways, you would unfortunately come on to some accidents that were out of our district. But you would just call them in and they describe our department, and one thing they responded, I couldn't believe how fast they got there. So like I say, and when all the guys got together, when you go fire department, you might go and sit at your course and listen all day long, but when all those guys got together and were having a friendly pop, that's when things got discussed.
Yeah.
And maybe one fire department's doing something a little bit differently. And like when the Fireflies were raising money for us, we didn't have very many Scott Air Packs, 1 or 2, and they were expensive. And so they were able to raise, I think one time we bought 4 of them. And then we were lucky enough to get the air compressors so we could fill them ourselves. Like the new fire hall we've got now is fantastic.
Right.
They've got state-of-the-art equipment, and they've got some really nice stuff in there.
And they've had to fight for it.
They've had to fight.
The fight for it.
When you
Yeah.
fight for equipment, it's a battle.
Yeah.
There's people that aren't in the fire department say, why do they need that? Why do they need that? Why do they need that? Well, things are changing. You need a good equipment.
Unfortunately, I think the government, some of them have that blinders on too.
Oh, yes.
Do not realize the importance of the money
Yeah.
for fire departments.
And you have to remember, these people are volunteering.
Yes.
You
I
know, they're not a paid fire department.
Yeah.
And at one time when I went to one fire school, the one guy did, like maybe I should come to Thunder Bay and join the fire department, but Thunder Bay's Thunder Bay. Nipigon is where I belong.
Yeah, it's amazing. Over the years, a lot of firemen gone through the department, but a lot of lives saved, and a lot of buildings been burnt down.
Oh yeah, and like you say, Nipigon was an old, and still is. Has like our house is an old wood house.
So I mean, just we look at Everett's history of Front Street and
Oh, yes.
being burnt down gradually.
Gradually,
right?
yeah, one
And
by one, yeah.
replaced one by one.
Well, even this place got fired one time.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, just think of how did they fight the fires in
Yeah.
those days? eh?
In the old days,
Yeah,
the
they
guys, they went to the fire with the clothes they had on.
Yeah.
There was no bunker suits and what have you. Now, when I got there, the coat that I was given was probably older than I was, and you just wore your own rubber boots, and that's how you went. And you, like, gloves, well, whatever you had available.
Wow.
And then the changes, like when we started the Auto X, and the government started, like doling out more money. We've got when we got our first bunker suits, everybody was up there giddy. These are brand new. Look, they're clean. They shine.
Yeah. Oh my.
And like some of the old stuff, like I've still got one old leather helmet, my original helmet. When we got the new helmets, they were going to throw them all out, so I saved one. So I don't know if you've got a helmet here. I should bring it down and give it to you.
I don't know if it's in here.
Yeah.
I haven't looked around that to find that, but yeah, you've given us a really good insight into a few years ago on the fire department,
Yeah.
because again, if we don't get that down, we're going to lose some of the history.
Oh, definitely. I think so,
Oh,
yeah.
for sure.
And,
And I'm sure there's ladies out there that have a lot more memories than I have.
Lots of
That-
stories to
lots
tell.
of stories to
Right.
tell.
And sometimes that's why it's good to have a couple of people talking at the same
Oh, yeah.
time, because you
Yeah.
remember things. Yeah, yeah.
That's like we were going through some old pictures and what have you, and Edie Finlinson, maybe about a month ago or so, come over with an
She
envelope.
was another firefly.
Yeah, another fight. Yeah, with Phil, and she come over and there was an envelope, and in it was the pictures of our initiation. Because the firemen, when you joined, they would wait till there was maybe 7 or 8 guys, because there was kind of more safety in numbers, and you would have to go through initiation of whatever.
Whimsical thing they decided. to do.
Whatever the officers had decided to do, and that entailed sometimes wearing some of your wife's clothes, and then because we had this big supper in the springtime, they would do it in the springtime when you got all kinds of people from the district, so you could go out and participate in whatever they had planned.
And they would be the waiters.
Yeah,
They would serve either the food or the desserts or
yeah.
something. They had to take part in their get-ups.
And when we had our supper the other night, when we got invited for the supper, some of the older guys, were saying, "Well, I can remember, that this we're getting," and that's Gordy Walters. He's one of the older gentlemen on the fire department, and he was just amused, like he was saying, "Holy cow!" He said, "That's that was so long ago, and everybody looks so young."
Oh, well, I think that's perfect. You've given us a really good background on the fire department.